So I've been out on the mill for longer than I care to talk about because my shattered brake. Mentioned in another video I found the pieces. That's kind of cool. So I have all the pieces for my shattered brake. But now I'm having to make the next one. And it's coming. It's coming. But this is many hours of machination. And after all that said, I'm doing incremental sizes on this, not that anything matters. This is the thinnest plate, and then the thickest impact plate here, and then thin, and then thinner, and then I'm going to turn. Anyway, just going through this. But some of my kids came up to shoot today, and my wife is out in South Carolina, and on a trip seeing grandbabies, and a couple of my other kids are in Hawaii, and a couple of my other kids went fishing, got some cool fish, and my other kids have got sports stuff go. And then one of my daughters posted in on our family page that, man, it's a great time to be alive. And that's very true, and I used to express that sentiment quite often on a place called Bench Rest Central. And it came to my mind today because I've been using Bench Rest Central as a resource for, man, 20-some years. And I miss it somewhat because I'm out machining. There's some really, really good machinists on there. And I'm running into some characteristics of the steel I'm machining. And I used to go on and, bounce this stuff off of knowledgeable guys. But they finally kicked me off of that one too. So that's not a whine. That's nothing. I'm just saying how my day went. And wanted to say that, yeah, guys, it's a great time to be alive. And what came to my mind is the changes that have happened industry-wide regarding accuracy in my lifetime have been astounding, phenomenal. And we can start with stuff that happened I went to gunsmithing school. I supposedly learned how to do this stuff. And everything that I learned was, by today's by what I do now, wrong. I was learned to drive reamers with big, bolt them into the lathe. Basically build a special fixture and align your tailstock and get everything stiff and run it. The only question was people were just coming out with bushed chambering reamers. But the rear was always affixed solidly. And over time, people found out that they weren't getting repeatable results, so people tried stuff and experimented, which is basically what I do all day. So I really admire the thinkers. I spend more time, as I've said before, I'm that guy that goes out to a new fishing area and meets all the locals, sees what everybody's doing, finds out how to catch the fish, and as soon as I know how to catch the fish there, I change and try something else because I want to do better. I want to, I don't want to catch fish like everybody else. Well, accuracy is driven by that same passion, and it's a big deal. Accuracy has driven people from cartridges to, like I was talking about the reamer holder, it's morphed. It came down to, from just chucking it in to driving it with a dead center, with a live center, with a holder, with a this, with the that, into this whole series of incarnations. There's a dozen now floating reamer holders. That was the big thing. There's ball bearing floating, super cool reamer holders. And I take it to what I call a next level because I can make identical chambers over and over. Like identical, like if I break a gun, I swap to another one and stick the same loads right in it. Obviously they have to be tuned, but that's not the point. I can swap brass between, every 300 WSM I own, we'll swap brass. Even though I've got some differences in neck thickness and neck length. That's the body itself I can recreate over and over. And that's a huge deal. Stress-free bedding. When I was in gunsmithing school, we were taught all these ways to get everything set up and then torque it down to the standard at that time for high-end accuracy was to torque the bolts down to some kind of a spec that you're going to use later. Well, in the face of it, that's just stupid. I mean, stupid. First of all, that repeatable torque is meaningless. Second of all, that repeatable torque generally in action is only bearing at a couple of points. You start sucking it down with any kind of torque and you bend it. Steel is as bendy as a rubber band. So stress-free bedding is something that's happened. And accuracy has made big jumps. When accuracy first started to get... There are still records that were set back in the late 80s, early 90s that are just now being broken or haven't even been broken. Because that's when things came together. Glue-ins, the PPC cartridge, neck sizing so that the cases were scrupulously fitted. First of all, you need to get a round and aligned chamber. Strides were made there. They made round and aligned chambers. Round is kind of hard, but not all chambers were aligned when they were just slobbered together like I was taught to do in gunsmithing school. So people learned how to better align their chambers, and then with neck sizing only, you could get perfect fit. The problem was that you would, of course, over time, tend to gall your bolt lugs. You wear an action out. You got all kinds of reasons. And as abilities increased, commensurate with the new accuracy levels, all of a sudden it became hoovish to be able to run your bag smoothly and quickly without losing your setup in the bags. So the people started fiddling with dies and dies and dies and dies and dies, and finally we evolved to the fitted die. Now, I have to be really clear. Fitted dies get talked about a lot on the inner tube. They get talked about a lot by people. And the one that bothers me the most, see, I still check the forums because I still like to see what's going on, even though I don't participate anymore. And I see these endless, I call these endless arguments turds in the cat box because nobody will step up and say what the real problem is. There's a thread going on right now where somebody is not getting quite enough sizing on their whatever it is, a PPC, a BR, I think it's a 30 BR. And people with bald-faced belief are saying, I went to such and such die because so-and-so makes the reamers for that company and this die fixed me. And the next guy says, oh, no, you do it this. Well, the simple fact is, people, that fitted dies are a thing, and fitted dies have come a long ways. But, yet they haven't come a long ways. The people who first came up with the fitted die concept, I'll say 20 years ago, I'll say in the early 2000s, nailed it. You have to just barely bump the case on all, and to do it well. Neil Jones built me a die probably, well, I dare not say when, but around 2000, one of my first ones. And his first question was, I said, go 2 thou under here. And he goes, are you sure that you want this thing to be parallel? I said, whoa, okay, now we're talking about a stage above and beyond what I even knew. So no, I now build my dies so that the most sizing that's done anywhere on the case is 2 thou, and everything else is less than that. And my sidewalls of my die are not parallel with the sidewalls of my chamber. My chamber and my die are different. Now, I caught the tail end of the bump die thing. I had a lot of people that would build you a sizing die, so-called sizing die, that was called a bump die with your chambering reamer, and it was a horrible, botched up mess. I had another guy that would use 12L14 and temper it, and he would claim it would shrink. Bottom line is, after spending tens of thousands of dollars on this stuff, I've learned to make dies, fit dies, buy dies, get dies. So, fitted dies. But by fitted dies, be careful to understand that they have to be scrupulously fitted to your chamber. Nobody else's die will work except under serendipitous circumstances. So, fitted dies to your chamber. And it's funny because these are things that have become accepted. Better scope mounting has become, it's slowly being accepted. Some of the people, like Kelbley's, sends out their hunting rifles with pinned bases. Well, that should be just required, because for a gun to shoot well, it must be stress-free bedded, the first thing we talked about. It must be a number of things. The chamber must be straight. The dies must fit it really well. So you got your stress-free and your easy to put in, well-fitted cartridges so that you get consistent vibrations. This is what we're working for. Better scope mounting is huge. There's been 25, 30 years of BS floating around as people return scopes over and over and blame scopes for all kinds of problems that in many, many cases are simply the mounts moving. Once you get your gun to shoot at a high level of accuracy, you can't expect two surfaces bolted together with these little baby-ass 648 or 840 screws, boonk, to not slide around. One of the fixes that some of the big boys took was to machine all the screw holes and make it so that the screws almost gall going. Well, that's just stupid. I'm sorry, that's a cheesy-ass fix for something that all you have to do is pin it. Put down pins. Now, this comes to another thing, because in the last few years, it's funny because I still spend a lot of time on the forums, and as these changes have occurred, there's a lot of them that have gotten resistance. This is one of the reasons I get kicked off the forums, because the woke-ass, whiny bitches are averse to change. If you don't agree with the status quo, they whine and grunt and cry and call you some kind of a rebel. And it's no. All of these changes have come, and I look at the ones on that have happened during my shooting time. And the couple that we've covered right now are simple, but in the last couple of years, just today I went on the forum, two of the forums, to look up, see if anybody had talked about the question that I had, and I noticed not only several posts that talked about timing barrels, but people are now referring to it as, well, that's going to mess up my barrel timing. That's beautiful. 5 years ago, barrel timing didn't even exist on the map. One guy, Gordy Gritters, came up with the idea. I'm sure others had the idea, and some of us just embraced it. And now it has become almost as standard as fitted dies. I see a ton of reference to fat-butted chambers, and I giggle. It's just sweet because, duh, that fixes all the problems. But I have been literally, well, let's not talk about my experiences with trying to bring some of these ideas or talk about some of these ideas in the public venue, because again, we got the whiny little boy children on the forums that grunt and moan and spew their opinions. And I learned a long, long time ago to get my opinions only from people who get it done. I watch these opinions get batted back and forth because somebody's got, let's say, sticky extraction. Well, when somebody comes on and says, this is what sticky extraction comes from, then again, all the whiny little crybabies go, but maybe not, but maybe not, but maybe not, but maybe not. Another thing I'm seeing referenced more and more and more, especially among the long-range shooters, is reloading to the kernel. 5 years ago, that was absolutely stupid. I've been loading to the kernel. That's how you get extremely good ES, extreme spread. It's funny because since I started this channel, I've got a bunch of episodes that show how to load to the kernel. And I pick up kernels and I dribble them in. And I get these opinion gurus come on. And they're like, I would never touch my powder. You've got to be crazy. I don't even like to handle my primers. You're touching your powder. You touch, no touch, no touch, don't touch, don't touch. Well, screw that. Because here's the thing. The reason we're doing it is one, singular, low ES. So now, again, I see this big argument going on the internet. In fact, one of the last posts I made on the forum that they rooted me out of was some guy said, what are the things that produce low ES? And I said, it's not things, it's one thing. It is loading to the kernel. All the other stuff. Now, once you've done this, you understand that that's true. In the meantime, we got guys, well, I measure my cases and I check the, measure my necks, and I'm going through weighing them with water and changing primers and reaming primers, flash hold, all this kind of crap. But here's the dirty little secret. I'm in the middle of this 50 BMG project. I'm taking random cases. 240 freaking grains of powder, my people. Enough powder to sink a battleship. Loading it to the colonel, and I have walked out with 4 of these guns that I'm building. Well, 3, because I haven't shot enough with what I'm calling the Noreen project. But it's just a given. You get it up into working pressure, and you load to the colonel, and without touching the cases, but the primer effect on these things is enormous. These primers are the size of a small child, and they hammer. So of all of the things I've talked and discussed on the inner tube for 25 years, about 15 items that weigh into low ES, including 4 or 5 things you do with the primer pocket and primers and weighing primers and weight. When I found out how to load to the colonel, all those problems went out the window. So, end of discussion. The goal here, the end all be all of the game, is to get low ES. Now all of a sudden, they're selling $2,500 powder throwers that throw to the colonel. People are starting to do it. We've gotten people's attention. Bullets have gone the same way. People have started to examine bullets and realize that, okay, if I get my ES down to 0, that variable is gone. Now I still have to tune. I still have to find my velocity windows. I still have to find my seating depth windows. So as these things whittle down, all of a sudden, people have been checking ogive length for a long, long time and checking bullets and meat-plat. There have been meat-plat modification tools for years and years and years. But this elimination of variables is so cool because as we go, the market, just the quiet people out there trying stuff, prove the market. My loading to the colonel idea that I've been just ranting about for half a dozen years was just hugely validated, is being validated. I'm building this big muzzle brake because I busted my quote best gun, so I've only been shooting the 2 that I feel are less accurate. But I'm having no trouble getting the extreme spread down to well under 20, and if the loads are hot enough, around 10. That's with no brass prep, no anything. I'm just, no bullet weighing, no current, nothing. The only thing I'm doing is weighing to the colonel. Now that's not to say that's the only thing, because there's times you got to fight ES just a little bit. But in the guns that I'm building, ES is everything. Especially on a slow 50 BMG. On my lightweight gun, I'm going to have to fire a little slower and cut the barrel back. ES becomes hyper important. It's a foot. 10 feet per second might be a foot at 1,000 yards. But, as long as and see, this is another thing. Bullets going to sleep. This is one of just because I'm getting there, because basically your gun's got a bug hole at 100 yards, just for starters. It's got a bug hole at 100 yards and have low ES to do anything further out, and it's got a bug hole, and not just, if it has low ES and it bug holes, it can't not shoot at long range. Now, a gun with high ES can easily shoot at short range because the bullets loop together and they converge at the same point. So I just thought, I'm out there on the lathe and I'm going through, and I ran in a couple of times. I can go get some lunch or something. I check in on the forums, and several of these items have become part of the landscape. That's beautiful. I remember when jam-fit fire forming became a thing among a certain select coterie of people. And that's another of the big one that's coming. The people that know. Other people are still talking about seating bullets long and greasing chambers and doing all kind of crap. But the bottom line is, to make good brass, you have to jam fit the cases. And I'm seeing people starting to refer to that. And that's beautiful. Coming up, that's becoming more and more. It's going to become more. This high torque value thing. It's going to come. It will be. I'm predicting this. I'm over here making a video channel to show how I achieve high torque and how I achieve abutting surfaces to give us high torque. And I'm predicting, because what wins the day is the thing that wins the day. Empirical testing is where it's all out. Anybody who comes in, and I'm warning you guys, anybody that goes out and tries stuff, you're going to meet resistance. People suck. People are stupid. Our whole country is going down the tubes because of woke ideas. Because, I mean, I watched Ben Shapiro lay into some guy on YouTube at lunch today, and this guy just flat out said a person's gender is what they want it to be. Well, I'm sorry. That's just simply not true. And we have to be able to sort the wheat from the chaff. We have to be able to sort. If we're going to go out there and shoot, it's not luck. There is no luck involved. So a few of the things that we're working on now, and that I'm working on here, are got a bunch of really different muzzle breaking ideas going on here. Elimination of vibration. But the big ones are this high torque value thing. And I'm going to wrap this up by saying, I'm rethinking my torque values on these, well, I'll just grab one because this is the one that I happen to be building. This little short stubby Tenyon, and earlier in one of the, I was talking about torque value and its meaning and how to achieve it, and how I'm using 250 foot-pounds on these things and wondering if it's enough. Well, today I had reason to pull a barrel and I just threw a checker out. I had misspoken. I forgot. I thought these were 12 threads per inch. I ran my impromptu numbers at 12 threads per inch. Well, my memory is, I won't even fall into the trap of saying I'm old. I've never had good memory. I mean, I remember, well, that's, no, let me stop. Okay, I have an eidetic memory just like you and everybody else. I have poor recall. I tend to get wrapped up and I tend to forget things. Under stimulus, I remember everything just like all of us do. We all remember everything. So I need to, but from my poor recall, I did an episode where I mentioned that 250 foot-pounds might not be enough because 250 foot-pounds on a 12-inch doesn't produce very much axial thrust. These are 8-inch. I'm thinking at this point, I might have to go not to 200, but to 450 like I originally said. To get the same pressure as an 18 TPI joint at 150, I might have to go to 450 with this thing. Well over 300 anyway, just without even doing the numbers, it's 2 to 1. So, just a few things I was thinking about as I'm out making my muzzle brake. You guys enjoy your day. I'll throw this in as an add-on video.